Now let's understand what is a template driven form or template based forms. So template driven forms looks almost similar to regular HTML forms and follows the same approach as Angular version 1 for structure. Um, it is majorly dependent on Angular core feature, which is two-way data binding, and uses the Angular ng model directive. So if you want to understand the template driven form, better to have knowledge on ng model attribute, and which is one of the directive. So since it is tied up with a ng model, automatically changes will be tracked and can be validated instantly. It requires heavy HTML code and less component sized code. Since it is more dependent on HTML, for a complex and large forms, it's going to be difficult to read and understand, and future maintenance is going to be tough for complex forms. So when to use this template based forms? So it is easy to use form and can be used only for basic use cases like a login page where the user need to enter a username and password. So now let's create an Angular 17 project and write the template based form and understand with the real-time project example. So to start with, I'll just start to write the basic HTML form, then we will add the Angular features to it. So to start a form, we need a form, and we need a input type text. We'll use this for username. We'll add a placeholder. And we'll change it to password. So now we have two fields. So let's add some CSS. Let's push this to center. Push this content to center. So I'll use a flexbox. Align items center and adjust the content to center. Should be justify content to center. Okay, now the content is center aligned. So now we have a plain HTML username and password. Okay, so we'll just add a submit button. So the login, and we'll say type as a submit. So now we have login form. So we'll just add a basic bootstrap to align them better, or for now let it be. So now we have so username and password and the login button. This is plain HTML login. Now we'll add the Angular feature for this. Okay, to add Angular, first thing we need to add a ng form to it. So it will be ng form, and since we have a submit button, we need a submit. It will be ng submit. and we'll say submit login form, and we need this function to be added in the TypeScript file. So for now let it be, or we'll add, okay, let it be for now. Okay, so now let's go to HTML again. So for this form we need a data binding. To add this data binding for each field, to use this, so for first thing we'll add username. We are tying this particular field with the Angular ng model. Okay, and we need for two-way data binding, we need model equal to username. Okay, same thing, we need it for password. Okay, now let's create a user and tie this model to it. If we have more number of fields, we cannot separate them like this. Instead, we will add a user object and we'll tie that. So let me just create a user.ts file, and within this export class user. Within this I need a constructor, and for this constructor we'll pass public string, username string, comma, password as string, 2 parameters. Okay, now let's import this to TypeScript file. This is the user. So here what we will do is we will assign a user, create a user with the same constructor by passing empty values to it. We'll import this TypeScript class. We'll tie this user in HTML here. Okay, now let's try to print this content. To print this content we need value. I'm using a pipe to JSON. Okay, now we have this empty right now. So when I start typing, this data is tied to this particular Angular form. Okay, and right now I just created a basic form and attached it to ng model for username and the password. Okay, now let's add the form validations. Okay, right now once we add the form validations and then let it submit. Okay, right now it is allowing it to submit. So now let's add the form validations, then we will submit. Okay, so to add form validations, first and foremost thing, so we need to include a class dot is invalid. So this particular class is going to attach the it will make the text box to be red at the edge of the text box to in red color. Okay, for that, to enable that, we need username should be when the username is invalid and username is touched. Okay, for these two scenarios we will throw that error message in red color. Okay, if you see, let me just push this here and we will add the same thing to password as well. Password, let's see, let's add bootstrap form control. So right now we are using bootstrap form control CSS to mark the form in red color. Now if you see, since I didn't enter any value, so it is throwing validation message and it is showing it like red. Okay, so it won't even let me submit. Okay, this is how we can add the validations. All we need to do is get hold of this is invalid and set this class to true if the username is invalid or if the username is touched and not entered anything. Okay, once you start typing, it will automatically go away. Okay, now like this. Okay, now what we will do is, let's submit this form. Instead of putting it here, let's simply submit this form and print that to the console, and in the next video we'll submit this full form to the backend. Okay, console.log, and it should have this .user. I'll use a console.table. Okay, now let's see the console. I'll enter username and password and submit. If you see, username and password, the values came. So it right now I consoled it from this particular function